Welcome back to Dark Horror Stories. In today's episode, I'm sharing 7 true disturbing stories from Chicago. These are tales of people who climbed into a lift, picked someone up, or took one last ride through the city and found something they were never meant to see. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button and let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Story 1. Chicago has this way of making even ordinary errands feel strange after midnight. The streets are never really empty, not completely, but there are pockets where the city seems to pull back from itself. Lower Wacker is like that. So is the stretch near the river where the concrete sweats in warm weather and everything smells like brake dust, wet stone, and old oil. I used to drive Lyft nights because the money was better, and because, at the time, I had convinced myself I was one of those people who actually liked being awake when everyone else was asleep. I kept a box of cinnamon gum in the cup holder, always listened to the same old soul station, and wiped my steering wheel down with lemon disinfecting wipes at red lights because I'm kind of compulsive that way. My floor mats were always dirty no matter what I did. There was a coffee ring in the center console I kept meaning to scrub out. I had one dead air freshener clipped to the vent, pine-scented, doing absolutely nothing. It was late October, cold enough that people hunched their shoulders when they crossed the street. I remember because my heater had started making this faint clicking sound whenever I turned it above half. I'd done 3 airport runs, 1 awful pickup outside a sports bar, and I was thinking of heading home after one more ride. Then a request came through from a spot under one of the overpasses near Lower Wacker. I almost canceled because the pin was weird. Not impossible, just off by enough to be annoying. But surge pricing had kicked in, and I figured I could deal with one more drunk guy who didn't understand how pickup points worked. When I rolled up, there was nobody there at first. Just columns, pooled yellow light, and one shopping cart tipped on its side like it had given up. My headlights swept over peeling paint and a puddle that looked deeper than it should have been. I checked the app. The rider name was Naomi Bell. Then she was standing beside my back passenger door. I didn't see her walk up. That bothered me later more than it did then. At the time, I just assumed I'd been looking at the app too long. She got in without saying hello. No smell of perfume, alcohol, cigarette smoke, nothing. Most riders carry some bit of the outside in with them. Rain, cold air, food. She just sat down and it was like the temperature inside the car dropped a notch. "Naomi?" I asked. A pause. Then, yes. Her voice sounded tired. Not raspy exactly. More like she was talking through a headache. The destination was up near Ravenswood. Long ride, good fare. I pulled out and tried my normal driver small talk. "Busy night, you heading home, you want the window up?" She answered in these tiny pieces like every word cost her something. I could see her in the rearview mirror, but only in fragments because it was dark. Pale cheek, dark coat, hair tucked back. She wasn't looking out the window. She was looking at the back of my head. You can feel that sometimes. I know that sounds stupid, but if you've driven strangers around long enough, you know when somebody's watching you and when they're just existing in the seat. I told myself she was just tired. At the first red light, I glanced again. Her face looked wrong, but not in a horror movie way, more in a proportion way, like features placed a little too carefully. Her eyes seemed too high maybe, or the mouth too low. Even now I can't pin it down, which is part of why it still bothers me. I turned the radio down because I thought maybe she wanted quiet. A few minutes later she said, "Don't take the upper road." I thought she meant the GPS had rerouted me to Upper Wacker. "Okay," I said, "I can stay lower." "No," she said, "don't let them see the roof of the car." That landed strangely enough that I laughed once, just under my breath. Not because it was funny, more because sometimes when people say weird things you automatically act like it's normal so they don't escalate. Got it, I said. We came up under a section where the roadway opens just enough to show a slice of black sky between buildings. My mirror caught the top of her face again. Her eyes weren't too high. There weren't any, not empty sockets. Worse than that. Just smooth skin stretched from brow to cheek, as if eyes had never belonged there in the first place. I looked away so fast I drifted toward the curb. A horn blared behind me. My first rational thought, and I'm embarrassed by this, was that it had to be makeup. Some influencer stunt, some prosthetic thing for a party. It was close to Halloween. Chicago gets weird with costumes. I clung to that for maybe 30 seconds, then something tapped the roof of my car. 3 slow taps above me, not from inside. We were moving. I checked the mirror again because part of me needed to see a normal woman and fix this in my head. She was still sitting with her hands folded in her lap. Long fingers, no gloves. Another 3 taps came from the roof. Then a dragging sound like fingernails pulled lightly over paint. I said, "What was that?" She didn't answer. The drag continued from the middle of the roof to the rear windshield. I looked in the mirror and saw, just for a second, pale fingertips slide down the outside of the glass from above. Not one hand, several. I hit the gas hard enough to shove me back in the seat. My mouth had gone dry. I could hear my heater clicking. I could hear the plastic straw wrapper in my cup holder trembling from the vibration. I kept telling myself maybe someone had jumped on the car at the last light, maybe some idiots, maybe I was being set up to get robbed. I wanted a human explanation so badly I almost convinced myself. Then the woman in the back leaned forward between the seats. I smelled river water and something old, like damp cardboard in a basement. "They won't like that," she whispered. I saw her clearly then because a street lamp flashed across her face. The skin where her eyes should have been rippled outward, like something under it had turned to look at me. I jerked the wheel and cut across 2 lanes, not even caring who I hit. The app started chirping that I'd gone off route. I don't remember deciding to do it, but I aimed for the first ramp with real traffic, real lights, other people. The tapping on the roof turned frantic, not loud. Worse, delicate. A rain of fingertips testing every inch of metal. I pulled into a gas station near River North so hard my tires screamed. There were 3 people outside, a guy filling a van, 2 women smoking near the door. I threw the car in park, jumped out and yanked open the back passenger door. Nobody was there. The seat was empty. No Naomi, no dark coat, nothing. I staggered back and looked up at the roof. There were handprints all over it, not greasy, not muddy. They looked pressed in from above somehow, like the metal had softened and taken the shape of palms and fingertips. Small hands, big hands, at least 7 or 8 of them. The van guy asked if I was okay, and I heard myself say somebody got out, which didn't even make sense because he'd obviously seen no one. My app still showed the ride as active, then it ended on its own. No fare, no rating. The rider name disappeared from my history before I could screenshot it. I know how that sounds. I checked over and over. It was just gone. I didn't drive for the rest of the night. I sat under the fluorescent lights inside the gas station with a stale blueberry muffin I never ate, watching the security monitor and pretending my hands weren't shaking. The next morning, when the sun came up, I got the car washed. The roof still held the dents. The guy there asked if hail had done it. I said maybe. What I found later was worse. On the inside of the rear windshield, down near the defroster lines where no passenger could have reached without twisting around, there was a single long streak in the fogged dust. Not a fingerprint, more like something had drawn slowly through it with a nail. It was shaped like an eye. I sold that car 2 months later. I stopped driving nights. Every now and then, if I'm parked under an overpass and hear soft tapping above me, I feel my shoulders lock up before I can stop it. I still don't take the upper road if I can help it. Story 2. There's a part of the south side where the blocks get wider and quieter after dark, and the old brick buildings look like they're holding their breath. I was living in Bridgeport then, splitting my time between grad school and driving Lyft because my stipend was a joke. January in Chicago makes everything feel temporary. Your scarf never dries right. Salt gets crusted on your shoes. Your car doors make that sticky rubber sound every time you open them. I kept a bag of mini pretzels in my glove box and one of those little hand vacuums in the trunk because I hated French fries under the seats. My dashboard clock was 7 minutes fast. The left rear speaker crackled in cold weather. I had this chipped red thermos that leaked coffee into the cup holder if I took a turn too hard. It was one of those nights where the city looked flattened by snow, even though the plows had already pushed most of it into gray ridges along the curb. My last pickup was supposed to be a short ride near Pullman. The rider was listed as Trevor Quinlan, and the pin was at an old row house on a block with only one porch light burning. I got there and saw him standing on the sidewalk in a denim jacket, no hat, no gloves, like the cold didn't reach him. Thin guy, late 30s maybe. He leaned down to the window instead of getting in. "You Candace?" he asked. "Yeah." He smiled without showing teeth. "Good, we have to pick up my brother." That wasn't in the app, which usually annoyed me, but people do that all the time. I almost said no because I was tired and the roads were slick. Then he added, "It's 5 minutes. He gets turned around easy." I should have canceled. Looking back, there were already too many small wrong things. His jacket was dusted with snow, but none of it melted on the fabric. His breath didn't show. When he opened the back door, I heard something clink in his pocket like loose hardware or small stones. He sat directly behind me. The second stop was only a few blocks away, near a fenced lot behind an abandoned church. No streetlights on that stretch, just my headlights and the sodium glow from farther down the avenue. A man was waiting by the fence. At least I thought it was a man. He was tall in this stiff way, like his body didn't know how to relax. He wore a knit cap pulled low and one of those reflective work jackets. When he got into the car, the smell hit me first. Wet dirt and pennies. "That's Elias Mercer," Trevor said. "He doesn't talk much." Elias folded himself into the back seat with too many separate motions. Knee, shoulder, head, like he was learning the sequence from memory. I started the trip again and watched them in the mirror. Trevor looked out the window. Elias stared at the back of the passenger seat without blinking. I remember noticing the Velcro on one of his boots was undone. I remember the radio host saying something about lake effect wind. I remember thinking I needed windshield fluid because the spray had started coming out weak. Then Trevor said, very casually, "If you see someone on the road ahead, don't stop." I gave this tired little laugh. "Yeah, okay. I'm serious." I looked up. Why? He was watching me in the mirror now. Because if it's ahead of us, it isn't really ahead. You get all kinds in rideshare. People testing you, spooking you, trying to start conversations by being weird. So I did what I always did. I assumed awkward before dangerous. That was my rationalization. Two brothers messing with the driver, maybe drunk, maybe just odd. The road cut along one of those stretches where industry gives way to open lots and broken fencing. Snow-banked gravel, rusted signs, a dead traffic light blinking red in all directions. I slowed. Someone stood in the middle of the intersection. Reflective jacket, knit cap, hands at their sides. I felt a weird sting go through my scalp. I checked the mirror. Elias was still in my back seat. I looked forward again and the figure in the road had taken one step closer. Not walked, just changed position the way a skipped frame changes. Trevor said, "Quieter now, don't stop." I hit the gas. The tires slipped, caught, and the car fishtailed. The figure didn't move out of the way. We passed so close I should have clipped it with the side mirror. Instead, as we went by, it turned its head toward my window. The cap sat too low, but not low enough to hide that the face beneath it had no features at all. No eyes, nose, mouth, just stretched skin, smooth and pale as dough, with a vertical seam running from forehead to chin like it had been zipped shut. I screamed. I'm not proud of that either. Just this short, ugly sound. Something thumped against the trunk. Trevor swore under his breath for the first time. Elias made a noise I still can't place. It wasn't speech. It sounded like someone trying to imitate speech after hearing it through a wall. In the rearview mirror, the thing was crouched on the back of my car. Its hands were splayed against the rear windshield, long enough that the fingers overlapped like bundled sticks. The seam in its face bulged outward, then it opened, not like a mouth. The hole seemed split from top to bottom, peeling apart wetly to show rows of flat, square teeth packed all the way up where the face should have ended. That was the image. That's the one I still get sometimes when I'm trying to sleep. Trevor shouted, "Turn right, now." I don't know why I listened. Maybe because panic makes any clear voice sound trustworthy. I cranked the wheel onto a narrower street between shuttered warehouses. My tires hit old ruts under the snow. The thing slid off the trunk, disappeared, then struck the passenger side rear door hard enough to cave it in. Elias began making that not-speech sound faster. Trevor grabbed the back of my headrest so tight I could hear the leather creak. "There," he said. "The gate." Ahead was a chain-link service gate hanging partly open. I took it too fast, clipped one side and scraped into the yard beyond. My side mirror snapped off. I threw the car into park and turned, ready to bolt. The back seat was empty. Both men were gone. No doors had opened. I would have heard them. The child lock on the rear passenger side was on because I always kept it on, yet there was nobody there. Only two dark, wet patches soaking slowly into the upholstery. Outside in the yard, I could hear footsteps moving around the car. Not running, circling, crunch, pause, crunch. I ducked down and grabbed the tire iron from beside my seat. My hands were so numb I almost dropped it. The footsteps stopped by the driver's door. Then someone knocked politely on the glass. 3 light taps. I didn't look up. I just crawled across to the passenger side, shoved the door open, and ran through the yard toward a building with one lit security lamp over a metal door. I slipped once and went down on one knee in icy gravel. Something moved beside the car, low and quick. I made it to the door and beat on it until a guy in a reflective vest opened it just enough to swear at me. He took one look at my face and let me in. When he and another worker came back outside with flashlights, the yard was empty. No footprints except mine, theirs, and one set circling my car. The circles weren't shoe prints. They looked like impressions from bundled rods pressed into the snow in a fan shape, over and over, as if something with too many stiff fingers had walked upright around the vehicle. Police never found anyone, not that I expected them to. I said the passengers fled after an altercation because that was easier than the truth. The proof came the next morning when I cleaned out the back seat. Wedged deep between the seat cushion and the door was Elia's bootstrap, torn clean off. Stuck to the underside was a strip of pale skin, thin as onion peel, with a line embossed straight down the center like it had split there and sealed again. I dropped it into a trash bag and took the bag straight to the dumpster outside. I still quit driving within the week. When snow hits the city now and I see someone standing too still at a crosswalk, I always check twice to make sure they're only in one place. Story 3. The lake makes Chicago feel haunted even when nothing's happening. That's the thing about driving near the water late at night. Everything opens up, and instead of feeling less trapped, you feel more exposed. There's nowhere for your eyes to settle, just dark water, colder air, and those stretches of road where the city's sounds fall away for a second. I was driving Lyft part-time after getting laid off from a hotel downtown. Not forever, I told myself, just until I figured things out. I kept an emergency poncho under the passenger seat, a flashlight in the door pocket, and one of those little packs of peanut butter crackers in the console because I got shaky if I went too long without eating. My car always smelled faintly like wintergreen from the mints I chewed to stay awake. The rear passenger window sometimes stuck halfway. My phone mount had a hairline crack across the plastic clamp. It was early spring, but the lakefront still had that raw March cold to it. Not snowing, not raining, just damp enough that the sidewalks reflected every light. I got a pickup request from near Montrose Harbor a little after 1 a.m. The rider name was Lydia Farrow. People do get rides from there late, especially after bad dates or long walks or parties on boats in warmer weather, so I didn't think much of it. The parking lot was mostly empty. A few gulls picked at something by the curb. There was an abandoned scooter lying on its side. My wipers made that dry rubber hiccup across the glass because I kept forgetting to replace them. Lydia was standing near the chain fence by the water. She wore a cream-colored coat that looked too light for the weather and carried no purse, no phone, nothing. She got in the front seat, which surprised me. Most people don't unless the back has stuff in it. Mine didn't. She just opened the passenger door and sat down like she'd been in my car before. "Sorry," she said. "I don't want to sit alone." Her voice was normal, pleasant even, maybe mid-30s. Dark hair pinned up loosely. There was lipstick on her teeth, just a little smear. That detail stayed with me because it made her seem ordinary. "Rough night?" I asked. She gave a tiny shrug, something like that. The destination was up in Edgewater, not too far. We pulled out onto the lakefront drive, and for a while it was quiet except for the tires and the heater fan. She kept one hand on the door handle, thumb rubbing the seam in the plastic over and over. After a few minutes she said, "If someone waves at us, don't stop." That was the second time in my life I'd heard a passenger say something like that. The first time had ended badly enough that you'd think I'd learn, but people say weird things in cars when they're upset. I told myself she'd had a fight with somebody at the harbor. An ex, maybe, somebody trying to follow her. "Okay," I said. "You want me to call someone?" "No." She looked in the side mirror, then turned it inward with 2 fingers so it faced uselessly at the door panel. "Please don't use the mirrors too much either." I laughed once, nervous. "That's kind of part of driving." "I know." She pressed her lips together. "I just don't want you seeing her see you." That sat between us. My scalp prickled, but even then I tried to be reasonable. Woman in distress. Maybe she was scared of someone mentally ill. Maybe she was mentally ill. The city trains you to keep moving through other people's strange moments. We passed the tennis courts and the dark strips of parkland. On the lakeside, the black water seemed level with the road, which it never is, but at night it plays tricks on you. Lydia sat very straight. I noticed a rip at the hem of her coat. I noticed she wasn't wearing earrings. The one earlobe had a fresh red mark like something had been torn out recently. At a stoplight near Foster, a woman stepped off the curb and waved both arms. Cream-colored coat, dark hair pinned up. For one stupid second, I thought Lydia had gotten out without me noticing. Then the real Lydia made this low sound in her throat, not panic exactly, more like resignation. "Go," she said. The light was still red. The woman in the crosswalk smiled at me through the windshield. Same lipstick, same face. Then she lifted a hand and tapped the glass from outside. We were in the middle lane. I slammed through the light. Horns exploded behind me. Lydia twisted in her seat and looked out the back window, but she kept her eyes lowered as if she didn't want to make direct contact. I checked the rear view before I remembered what she'd said. The woman was standing in the intersection, but there were now 3 of her, one in the street, one on the sidewalk, one on the median, each facing my car exactly the same way. I said, "What the hell is that?" Lydia covered her mouth with both hands. Her nails were bitten down to the quick. I thought she'd stay by the water. I wanted answers. I wanted her out of my car. I wanted literally anything ordinary to happen, like a bus pulling out or a guy cutting me off. Instead, I watched one of the women in the mirror break into a run. She didn't move like a person. Her upper body stayed almost perfectly level while her legs blurred too fast beneath her, heel never seeming to hit first, just toe like a dancer winding up on invisible wire. She kept pace with us. At 40 miles an hour, I hit 50, then 60 on a city stretch where I should have been doing 35. The car rattled, my phone mount shook. The peanut butter crackers flew out of the console onto the floor. Lydia kept whispering, "Don't let her beside me, don't let her beside me." At the next curve, something slapped against the passenger window. Her face, Lydia's face, but wrong around the mouth. The smile was too wide all the way to the cheek, and inside it there were not teeth but little dark moving shapes like wet black petals folding over each other. That was my moment, the one I wish I could take out of my memory with a spoon. Lydia screamed and kicked her own door open while we were still moving. The stuck window shuddered halfway down on impact. Cold air blasted in. She nearly fell out, caught herself, and then did something that made even less sense than anything else that night. She grabbed the emergency poncho from under the seat and threw it at the thing outside the window. The translucent plastic hit the glass, spread, and for a second the face beneath it blurred. I heard this sharp insect-like clicking from outside. The thing peeled away. "Turn into the garage," Lydia said. "What garage?" She pointed ahead at a public parking garage entrance near an apartment block. I swerved in, tires screeching up the concrete ramp. Level 1, Level 2, Level 3, fluorescent lights, bare pillars, nobody there. "Higher," she said. I don't know why I kept following her directions, but Tara makes delegation easy. We hit the roof level, open to the lake wind. I threw the car into park. "Get out," she said. We ran to the stairwell door. It was locked from outside. Of course it was. I turned back toward the car. The other Lydia stood beside it on the roof, coat fluttering in the wind. Another one stepped up from the ramp. Then another emerged from behind a concrete pillar. Same face, same pinned hair, same smear of lipstick, all with those two wide mouths softening open. The real Lydia crouched beside me and said, "Don't answer if they speak. They can talk." She looked at me like I'd ask the dumbest question in the world. "They can ask," the nearest one said, in Lydia's exact voice. "Which one of us got in first?" My whole body went cold and hollow, because for half a second I honestly couldn't remember. I'd seen a woman by the fence. I thought I'd watched her enter the car, but memory isn't the solid thing you want it to be when fear gets in. The copies started moving closer in little synchronized steps. Then the locked stairwell door banged open from inside as a man coming up for a smoke shoved through. I don't think I've ever scared someone so badly in my life. Lydia grabbed his arm, pulled him through, and we all tumbled into the stairwell. The door slammed. On the other side came soft tapping. Then several voices together, all of them Lydia's, asking the same question in a patient tone. "Which one of us got in first?" We stayed in the stairwell until building security found us. By then Lydia was gone, not vanished right in front of me, nothing dramatic. I looked away while trying to explain things to the guard, looked back, and she wasn't on the landing anymore. I searched for her afterward. The ride history still showed her name, but the drop-off address was a vacant lot in Edgewater with no building on it. No record of a profile after that. The proof came when I finally got my car cleaned out the next day. Wedged behind the passenger sun visor was a lipstick tube I know hadn't been there before. Cream-colored casing, dented cap. When I opened it, the wax wasn't red. It was the glossy black-blue color lake water turns under moonlight. I threw it into Belmont Harbor on my next shift and quit rideshare a week later anyway. I still avoid mirrors in parked cars at night. If I catch a face in one, I need a second to be sure it's attached to me. Story 4. If you drive long enough in Chicago, you end up on the edges of the city whether you mean to or not. Out near the old industrial stretches by the Calumet, The streets get wide and empty in a way that feels almost suburban until you notice there's nobody on the porches, nobody at the bus stops, nobody moving behind the windows. I was doing Lyft weekends after a divorce because I couldn't stand being alone in my apartment with the radiator hissing and the neighbor's TV bleeding through the wall. Driving gave me something easy to focus on. Meter on, map up, keep going. I kept butterscotch candies in the console because my daughter liked stealing them when I had custody. There was a Cubs sticker peeling off the back bumper from about 10 years ago. My trunk had a snow brush in it year-round. The passenger seat had a tiny burn mark from a dropped cigarette that wasn't mine. This was in August, hot enough that the city smelled baked by midnight. My shirt stuck to my lower back. I just finished a pickup near Hedgewish when another request popped up from a road skirting some marshy industrial land. Rider name, Marisol Vega. The pin took me down a service road with weeds growing through the cracks and no marked houses, just chain-link fences and a utility shed with graffiti on one side. I almost turned around. Then I saw a woman standing under a broken lamp with a little boy beside her. That's the kind of thing that short-circuits your caution. A kid at night. He wore a yellow raincoat even though it hadn't rained in days. She waved once too hard like she was trying not to miss me. When they got in, the boy climbed into the back without speaking. Marisol took the front seat and apologized immediately, that rushed, embarrassed way people do when they've had a bad night. "My sister's place," she said. "Please, I'll update the address once we get moving. My phone keeps freezing." She smelled like sweat and cheap floral body spray. Very human, very normal. The boy smelled like pond water. I noticed a juice box straw wrapper stuck to his shoe. I noticed Marisol's thumbnail was split down the middle. I noticed my AC was blowing warmer on the driver's side than the passenger side like it always did. "Long night?" I asked. She gave this exhausted laugh. "You could say that." The boy, without looking up, said, "Don't cross the bridge." She went completely still. I thought, custody issue, family fight, kid overtired. That was my rational framework. A mother and son in some kind of domestic mess. I even felt sorry for them. Marisol turned around and said softly, "Tomas, hush." He lifted his head then, and I had to hide my reaction because something about his face made my stomach tighten. Not ugly, not injured, just too flat in expression, like a mask held still by effort. His eyes were open wide but unfocused, fixed somewhere just past my ear. "Don't cross the bridge," he repeated. "That's where they look in." Marisol asked if I could take local roads north instead of the faster route over a small industrial bridge. I said sure, people have preferences, no problem. We drove for a while through those half-dead corridors of warehouses and empty lots. My GPS kept trying to redirect me back toward the bridge. Marisol kept saying no, turn here, then here, and I started to realize she didn't seem to know where her sister actually lived. She'd given instruction, hesitate, change it. The boy never spoke except once to ask if I had any gum. I handed him a pack from the console without looking. A minute later, I heard him spit each piece, one by one, onto the floor mat. My irritation almost pushed the fear aside. "Hey, come on, buddy. He doesn't like mint," Marisol said quickly. "That's okay," I muttered, though it was. Then we came to a dead end at the marsh. No houses, no sister. Just reeds moving in wind I couldn't feel through the glass. Marisol stared ahead. "I think I made a wrong turn." The boy said, "They found us." At first I thought the sound outside was frogs. The marsh was full of that kind of noise at night, but it wasn't croaking. It was wet throat sounds repeated at equal intervals circling the car. I turned off the radio. The AC fan hummed. Somewhere in the trunk, the snow brush rattled as if something had brushed the bumper. I looked out my window and saw reeds bending, not with the wind, with steps. Something moved just below the top line of the grass pacing the car. Then another shape on the passenger side. Then one behind us, tall enough to part the reeds in a straight channel. Marisol whispered, "Don't let them near the boy." That was the moment I started to think maybe this wasn't some family situation. Maybe I should have been afraid much earlier. I threw the car in reverse, but as I backed up, the rear tires spun in mud at the road edge. We were stuck enough that the engine whined. The boy began tapping the back of my seat with 2 fingers, very fast, very steady. "Stop," Marisol snapped at him. He didn't. The shapes in the reeds came closer. I finally saw one under the sodium spill from my reversing lights. It was man-sized but bent in the middle like its spine hinged wrong. Its skin looked gray-green and slick, stretched tight over a rib cage too wide for the rest of it. The head was the worst. Smooth and bulbous in back, jaw hanging loose, and from the mouth dangled strands of black weed like it had just risen out of water. It lifted one hand to the window. There were too many knuckles in the fingers. I jammed the accelerator again. Mud sprayed. The car lurched backward another inch and stopped. On the hood, suddenly something landed hard, not climbed, landed. I shouted and ducked. A body sprawled across the windshield, limbs folded frog-like. Its face was inches from the glass. No nose. Just 2 vertical slits opening and closing. It opened its mouth and a wad of lake grass spilled out, sliding green-black across my windshield in a wet curtain. That's the image I can't wash out. Marisol grabbed the wheel. "The lights, flash the lights." I did, mostly because I'd do anything at that point. High beams on, off, on, off. The thing on the hood recoiled, joints twitching. In the marsh, more of them rose. I don't know how many, 4, 6. The reeds around us shivered with bodies. The boy started laughing, not normal laughing. Quiet, breathless, delighted. Marisol slapped him hard across the mouth. He turned toward her slowly, and for the first time his expression changed. His lips peeled back too far, showing gums black as bruises. "I told you," he said, and the voice wasn't a child's anymore. Marisol screamed, threw open her door, and ran into the road. I belayed out my side at the same time. The thing on the hood slid off, hit the pavement on all 4s, and sprang toward where the boy still sat in my back seat. He didn't resist. He leaned toward it like he recognized it. I ran, not far, not nobly, just far enough to clear the ditch and get behind an electrical box near the service road. Marisol was ahead of me, slipping and cursing in Spanish, one shoe gone. We kept expecting them behind us, but the sounds clustered around the car instead. Wet impacts. Scraping. That odd throat call. We reached a lit truck depot almost half a mile away and pounded on the gate until a watchman came out. When a patrol car finally drove us back, my car sat alone at the dead end with every door open. Back seat empty. No boy. I never saw Tomas again, if that was even his name. The proof was in the morning. My floor mat on the back passenger side held the 5 pieces of gum he'd spat out. Each one had been flattened and pressed with tiny tooth marks, not from the top and bottom like a child chewing, but all around the edges in a complete ring, like something with a circular mouth had tested them. Marisol wouldn't answer my calls after that. Maybe she changed her number. Maybe she was never going to. I stopped driving the industrial edges at night. If a route takes me near marsh water now, I lock my doors even when I'm alone. Story 5. O'Hare at night feels less like an airport and more like a machine that forgot why it was built. Everything is bright, echoing, and just a little too efficient. Even outside the terminals, where the pickup lanes are chaos during the day, there are hours after midnight when the place gets this sterile emptiness to it. I liked airport rides because they were clean money. Business travelers. Red eyes, people too tired to talk. I drove Lyft in a silver SUV with crumbs permanently embedded between the console and the seat, a cracked charger cable I should have thrown out, and a pine tree air freshener hanging from the mirror that made the whole cabin smell like fake Christmas. I always kept receipts stuffed in the door pocket. One of my socks had a hole in the heel that night and kept bunching under my foot every time I hit the brake. I'd been waiting in the rideshare lot for almost 40 minutes when I got matched with Darren Kessler at Terminal 5. International arrivals, good fare maybe. He came out with no luggage. That was the first thing I noticed. No backpack, no rolling bag, not even a duty-free sack. He wore a tan windbreaker buttoned wrong and kept looking over his shoulder through the sliding doors like he expected someone to call him back. He got into the third row instead of the middle row, which people almost never do. "Sorry," he said, "need a little space." His voice was shaky but polite. Mid-50s maybe, square glasses, wedding ring, a tiny nick on his chin with dried blood under it. "Where to?" I asked, though it was already in the app. "Albany Park." "Home," he said, then laughed once at himself. "Yeah, sorry, long day." I pulled into the outbound lanes. Traffic was thin. Construction barrels glowed orange. The radio was low, some old song I knew all the words to but couldn't name. Darren kept craning to look out the rear side window. "You okay back there?" I asked. He took too long to answer. "Did you see anyone get in after me?" That question irritated me more than it scared me. It was late. I was tired. I glanced at him in the mirror. "No." He rubbed both hands over his face. "Good, good." I figured sleep deprivation, fear of being followed, maybe a panic attack after flying. Airports do that to people. I offered water. He declined. We merged onto the Kennedy. The city ahead was all sodium glow and red tail lights. After a minute, Darren said, "If I ask you to pull over, don't. No matter what I say." I almost told him to get out right then. Instead I said, "Sir, if this is some kind of joke." "It is." He leaned forward enough that I could smell his clothes. Not sweat, not cologne. That stale, chilled smell of airplane cabin air and something underneath it, like dust from an old vent. "I think I left with one too many," he said. I actually smiled at that because I thought he meant a drink. "All right." "No," he said. "I mean from the customs line." I didn't answer. Sometimes silence is the best tool in a rideshare car. People hear themselves eventually and either calm down or say something useful. He whispered, "It stood behind the family with the stroller for 40 minutes. Nobody noticed it switch." I looked back reflexively then, through the little gap between seats into the dark of the third row. There was someone sitting beside him, not suddenly appearing, not movie magic. More like my brain finally allowed itself to register the shape that had been there all along. A thin figure pressed into the far corner seat where shadows pooled. Head bent too low, hands folded. I nearly sideswiped a concrete barrier. "Who's with you?" I shouted. Darren made a sound that was almost a sob. "I told you." I should have stopped. Any sane person would stop, but his earlier warning had gotten under my skin, and there was something about the figure's stillness that made the idea of pulling over feel worse than continuing. I turned on the dome light. The figure lifted its head. It had Darren's face, not similar, his face exactly. Same glasses, same nick on the chin, same thinning hair flattened by travel, but the expression was blank, unfinished. Like someone had copied the features and forgotten the person. Darren, in the third row, let out this miserable whisper. "It took a while in the bathroom mirror. I killed the dome light so hard I almost snapped the switch off." My hands felt slick on the wheel. The copied Darren spoke then, very quietly, in perfect sync with the real one. "Can you let me out here?" Same words, same voice, half a beat braided together. I just drove. The thing in the seat behind Darren began mirroring his movements with a lag. Darren wiped his nose. A second later it wiped its nose. Darren turned his head. It turned its head farther, too far, until I heard a soft click, click, click from the neck joints. That was horrifying enough. What broke me was seeing it smile before Darren did, like it knew what his face would do a moment in advance. I took the next exit without looking. Some industrial side road off the highway where trucking depots squat behind chain-link fencing. I planned to pull into a lit gas station, run, call someone I don't know, make it somebody else's problem. But halfway down the ramp, Darren shouted, "Don't stop," because his copy had leaned close to his ear and begun whispering. I couldn't hear the words. I could only see Darren's body reacting, each sentence making him fold in tighter like he was being shown photographs from inside his skull. Then the copy reached up and took off its glasses. Its eyes underneath were flat, reflective silver, like the backs of spoons. I don't remember deciding. I slammed the brakes, threw the car into park, and laid out into the shoulder. Darren came after me so fast he left one shoe behind in the third row. We ran across the frontage road toward a 24-hour truck wash lit up like a stadium. Behind us, the SUV's horn started blaring, not continuous, rhythmic, 3 short, 2 long, 3 short. People came out of the truck wash office to see what was happening. We kept running. When I looked back, the copied Darren was sitting in my driver's seat with both hands on the horn, watching us through the windshield. Then it raised one hand and beckoned with 2 fingers. The workers helped us call police. By the time anyone approached the car, it was empty. Engine still running, driver door open, third row vacant except for Darren's shoe and a damp oval in the upholstery. The proof came when I vacuumed the SUV the next day and found my stack of fuel receipts scattered across the cargo area. On the backs of 3 of them, in my own handwriting, were notes I had not written. Let the right one ride, repeated over and over, each line shakier than the last. I never picked up from Terminal 5 again. Darren texted me once from a number that disconnected the same day just to say thank you for not pulling over. He didn't explain. I didn't ask. Some things feel less safe the closer you get to understanding them. Story 6. The north side looks friendlier than some parts of Chicago at night, which maybe makes it worse when something goes wrong. Tree-lined streets, old apartment buildings, porch lights, corner bars still lit up. You think being in a neighborhood protects you. You think if you scream, someone will hear it over a TV or a dishwasher or a dog losing its mind behind a screen door. I was driving Lyft in the spring while trying to save up for a move. I had a pack of stale spearmint gum in the door, 2 reusable grocery bags in the trunk, and 1 ridiculous dashboard hula dancer my sister gave me as a joke. The fabric on my driver's seat had started pilling. My left blinker clicked louder than the right. I'd eaten half a gas station egg salad sandwich around 10 and regretted it by midnight. It was close to 2 a.m. when I got a pooled pickup, back when I still accepted shared rides, from outside a little bar in Andersonville. The first rider was Owen Price, a guy in a black beanie who apologized 3 times for smelling like whiskey, even though he mostly smelled like laundry detergent. He sat in the back, buckled immediately, and spent the first 5 minutes telling me about a coworker's engagement party I clearly should have attended, according to him. Then we pulled up for the second pickup, rider named Zara Holloway. She was waiting under a street tree in a long gray coat, no phone visible, one hand tucked in her sleeve. When she got into the front seat, Owen stopped talking mid-sentence. That happens sometimes. A new person changes the energy, no big deal. Zara gave me an address in Uptown, not far. She looked maybe 30, maybe younger, hard to tell. Very still. Her hair was braided down her back. She had a tiny silver safety pin through one eyebrow. "Busy night?" I asked. "Not anymore," she said. Owen laughed weakly from the back like he felt obligated to fill the silence. "Amen." We drove 2 blocks before Zara turned slightly toward me and said, "Could you please not stop if anyone knocks?" That made Owen laugh again, more genuinely this time. What is with people saying creepy stuff in Ubers? It's Lyft, I said automatically, and I hate that I remember that. Zara didn't smile. She was watching the passenger side mirror. "Sorry," Owen said. "Lyft." I told myself she was being dramatic after a bad date or a fight. Same rational pattern as always. Stranger behavior sorted into familiar boxes so I didn't have to feel alarmed. Outside, the sidewalks were still damp from an earlier shower. Neon from a tavern sign blinked over a puddle. Someone had left a box fan on a curb. A bus shelter ad kept flashing between 2 frames because the backlight was failing. Then Owen said quietly, "Did she get in with us?" I looked in the mirror. "Who?" He pointed out the rear side window with one finger. A woman in a long gray coat was walking beside the car. Same braid, same height, same silver glint at the eyebrow. We were doing at least 25. I locked my elbows on the wheel. Nope. Front seat Zara closed her eyes. "Don't look at her mouth." I looked immediately, of course. People always do exactly the wrong thing. The woman outside turned her head toward me. The lower half of her face opened not downward, but sideways, splitting from each cheek toward the ears. The skin folded back in 4 neat flaps, revealing a dark interior lined with short white teeth angled inward like fish hooks. I jerked the wheel and clipped a trash can. Owen shouted. The outside thing kept pace for another half block, then peeled away into a gangway between buildings without breaking stride. For a few seconds, none of us spoke. Then Owen, in a voice much smaller than before, said, "That's not possible." Zara answered, "I know." She finally turned toward me. There were tears in her eyes, but she looked tired more than panicked. "She's been taking rides with me for 3 nights. That should have made no sense. It still doesn't. But the fear in the car changed then from surprise to endurance, like we had entered a situation already in progress. "What do you mean taking rides?" I asked. "She waits until I'm almost home." Owen made a choked sound. "You're saying she looks like you?" "Yes. And you just got in this car. Like that's a normal thing to say." "No," Zara said. "I got in because I thought having witnesses might help." That made me angry for half a second. Angry is easier than scared. Then something knocked on the roof above the front passenger seat. 2 slow knocks. Zara whispered, "Too late." At the next intersection, a pedestrian signal counted down in red. The car was boxed in by parked cars and 1 delivery van ahead of us. We had to stop. We had no choice. Something crouched onto the hood. Gray coat pooling around thin knees, braid hanging forward, the head bent down until her forehead touched the windshield. When she looked up, I saw that the safety pin through her eyebrow wasn't jewelry. It was stitched through the skin, pinning a flap of flesh closed over what should have been an eye. That was the image. That stitched shut eye. Owen started sobbing behind me, really sobbing, hands over his face. Zara stayed still, but I could see her pulse jumping in her throat. The thing on the hood tapped the windshield with 1 nail and spoke in Zara's voice. "Which one do you want to keep?" I think all the heat left my body then. My hands were numb, my feet were numb. The light changed and the delivery van ahead crawled forward. I floored it. The thing slid sideways across the hood, nails shrieking on the glass, and vanished off the passenger side. "Take Lake Shore," Zara said. "No," Owen said immediately, voice cracking. "No open roads, no." "Open roads are better," she snapped. "She can't corner us there." That fight, dumb and human and badly timed, almost steadied me. I cut east anyway, choosing instinct over logic. We made it 3 more blocks before the rear passenger door flew open while the car was moving. Owen screamed. Wind blasted through the cabin. In the mirror, I saw nothing in the seat behind him for one impossible instant, and then there was a second Zara sitting beside him, folded too close, one arm draped around his shoulders. He hadn't noticed yet. She lifted one finger to where her mouth should have been, but instead of lips, she only had a long vertical slit quivering under smooth skin. I didn't think. I slammed the brakes so hard all 3 of us lurched. Owen pitched sideways, saw what sat next to him, and kicked out of the open door onto the street. Not graceful, just pure animal exit. He rolled, got up, and sprinted between parked cars without looking back. I turned to grab front seat Zara, but she was already out, running for the lit entrance of an all-night pharmacy on the corner. I followed. Behind us came that horrible quick footfall, not quite matching human cadence. We made it inside just as the clerk was locking the inner security gate for restocking. He stared while we hammered on it from the customer side, babbling nonsense. Through the glass storefront, the other Zara stood under the red pharmacy sign in the drizzle, one stitched eye facing us, head tilted. Then she pressed her palm to the glass. There were 6 fingers. She stayed there until a squad car rolled by the intersection. Then she stepped backward into darkness between the parked cars and was gone. The proof showed up in my car at dawn. Owen's beanie was on the back seat, which made sense, but woven into the knit all around the rim were long black hairs braided into the fabric in a perfect ring, so tight I had to cut them out with scissors. I mailed the beanie back to him after he contacted Lyft support for a lost item. I didn't include a note. Zara never reported anything lost, and her rider profile vanished by the next week. Sometimes when someone knocks on my hood at a car wash or a branch drags over the roof, I still have to fight the urge to abandon the vehicle and run inside somewhere bright. Story 7. By the time you've driven rideshare in Chicago for a few years, the city starts sorting itself in your head by texture instead of neighborhood. Streets that feel loose, streets that feel watched, blocks where the streetlights hum louder than they should. Rain changes all of it. Rain makes alleys breathe and reflections lie. I was doing Lyft full-time then because my restaurant had closed and I was too stubborn to admit I needed a different plan. My car had cloth seats that never really dried out after wet passengers, a squeaky brake pedal, and a trunk full of things I swore I'd organize someday. Jumper cables, an old hoodie, windshield fluid, a tote bag full of quarters from laundry. I always kept one tiny bottle of hot sauce in the glove box because I eat terrible food at terrible hours and like to pretend that improves it. The cup holders were sticky. The backseat smelled faintly of French fries even after I vacuumed. It was raining hard enough to blur the signs when I got a late pickup in Pilsen. The rider was Nico Salazar. Good rating. Short trip supposedly. I found him standing under the awning of a closed bakery with a paper grocery bag hugged against his chest. He got in the back and immediately said, "Please don't cancel if I change the destination." That wasn't unusual. People reroute for cigarettes, friends, bad decisions. He was maybe 22, soaked through despite the awning, with paint under one thumbnail and one sneaker lace dragging wet on the floor mat. The grocery bag smelled like cilantro and damp cardboard. "Depends where we're going," I said. "Not far. I just need to make 2 stops." The first stop was near a viaduct under the pink line tracks. He asked me to wait while he ran inside a little apartment building. I watched rainwater pour from the tracks in sheets. My wipers thumped. A train passed overhead and shook rust-colored droplets loose. I ate 2 cold fries from a bag under the seat because I hadn't had dinner. Nico came back with an older woman carrying a plastic storage bin with duct tape around the middle. He introduced her as Irene Doyle, his upstairs neighbor. She got in front because of the bin. "You're saving our lives," she told me in a voice like she'd been smoking for 50 years. "Or ruining them, hard to tell yet." I laughed politely. She didn't. We drove west. The rain got worse. Irene kept one hand on the taped bin the whole time, thumb rubbing the lid edge. Nico stared out the back window so intently I finally asked if someone was following us. "Not someone," he said. I remember rolling my eyes internally at that. Not visibly, I hope. But there's a kind of Knight Rider dramatic language you hear all the time. I assumed he'd had some apartment building weirdness, some mental health thing, maybe a family superstition. Irene smelled like menthol and wet wool. There was a tiny porcelain angel glued to a phone case. Nico's grocery bag had split at the bottom, and a lime kept rolling gently against my seat rails. "We just need to get to her sister's house," he said. "If we make it there before 3, it should be okay." "Should be," I said. Irene cut in. "He means it'll be okay." That shut the conversation down for a while. Rain hammered the roof so hard it sounded like handfuls of gravel. The GPS kept trying to take us onto the expressway, but Irene insisted on side streets only. At every stoplight, she checked the mirrors, then the side windows, then the rear view, like she was counting. At one red light in Little Village, Nico suddenly ducked. "Don't let it see you notice," he whispered. My whole body tightened. "See what?" He pointed not at the road, but at the reflection in the convenience store window beside us. There were 4 people in my car, me, Irene, Nico, and someone sitting in the middle of the back seat between the 2 headrests. The reflection showed it clearly because it wasn't distorted by rain the way the actual view was. Just a dark person-shaped figure with its head bowed and its hands folded. Too narrow in the shoulders, too long in the arms. I whipped around. Nobody there. I looked back at the store window. Still there in the reflection. That was bad enough. Then it raised its head, not in the car, only in the glass. Its face wasn't a face. It was a wet black surface like polished stone, except for a cluster of small human teeth set too high where one eye should have been. I let out this involuntary noise and punched through the red light. Horns erupted. Irene shouted at me to keep driving. Nico actually laughed once in pure terror, which is a sound I hope never to hear again. "It only likes reflections," he said. "Only," I snapped. Usually I wanted them both out. I wanted them and the bin and the split grocery bag and the whole nightmare offloaded at the nearest gas station. But every reflective surface we passed showed that 4th passenger now, in bus shelter glass, in dark storefronts, in a puddle broad as a mirror at a curb cut, sometimes sitting upright, sometimes crouched on the roof. Once in the black screen of an ATM vestibule, I saw it pressed flat against the rear windshield from the outside, teeth-eye staring in. Irene finally popped the duct tape on the storage bin. Inside were dozens of old hand mirrors, pocket mirrors, compact mirrors, cheap oval mirrors with plastic frames, some cracked, some intact. "Take one," she said. I actually shouted, "No." "Take one," she repeated, shoving a square mirror into my lap. "Face it backward." I did because by then my reasoning mind had stepped out for a smoke. In the mirror, instead of my back seat, I saw a long wet hallway I didn't recognize, lined with doors on both sides. At the far end stood the black-faced thing, much taller than it had looked in reflections outside. Then all the doors in that hallway opened at once. Hands reached out from every doorway. I dropped the mirror and it cracked against the center console. Irene swore, "Don't break them." Nico had one too, held against the window like a shield. His face looked green. The thing began appearing closer in every reflective surface, as if each glance let it advance. Rearview mirror, middle seat. Side mirror right behind my rear tire. Chrome on a parked truck running along the curb. It never moved in the real world, only in reflections. That somehow made it worse. There was nowhere safe to look. Then the iconic moment came, if I can call it that without sounding heartless. We stopped under a viaduct because a stalled car blocked the lane ahead. Rainwater dripped through cracks overhead. In the rearview mirror, the thing was suddenly leaning between the front seats. Its teeth eye blinked, not an eyelid. The ring of teeth opened and closed around a dark, wet center. I slapped the mirror upward so hard it snapped off its mount. Irene yelled, "Good." The stalled car ahead wasn't moving. Another vehicle blocked us behind. The rain boxed us in. Nico said, voice shaking, "It's in the windows now." He was right. The side windows had gone dark from the outside, not with tint or shadow, but with pressure, as if something tall and wet was standing flush against both sides of the car at once. Then fingers began pressing inward through the rain on the glass. Long, black, jointless fingers, more like eels than bones, leaving no prints. Irene told me to leave the car. "No," she said, "take nothing reflective." I didn't argue. I shoved open my door and ran into the rain. Nico grabbed the bin. Irene grabbed Nico. We left the grocery bag, the quarters, everything. We sprinted under the viaduct, around the stalled car, and through a side gate into a brightly lit auto body shop that was still open because somebody inside was finishing a late job. When I looked back from the shop entrance, my car sat alone in the rain. Every mirror in it, including the broken rearview stub, was angled toward the driver's seat. There was no one inside. Then all 4 side windows fogged from within at the same time. The proof came after sunrise. The police had the car towed because I'd left it blocking part of the lane. When I got it back, all the mirrors were gone, snapped off clean. Even the little vanity mirrors behind both sun visors had been ripped out, clips broken. In the middle of the backseat lay one object I'd never seen before, a round compact mirror, old and tarnished, still latched shut. When I weighed it in my hand, something inside shifted like teeth in a pill bottle. I drove straight to the river and threw it in without opening it. I don't do rideshare anymore. I don't keep mirrors facing the bed in my apartment either, which sounds dramatic until you've learned that a thing can ride with you for miles without ever needing a seat. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these stories, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Let me know in the comments which story unsettled you most, and share this with your friends who love a good scare. Until next time, stay safe out there.